Kamloops is the largest city in British Columbia's Thompson Nicola region and has a fascinating history dating back to the days of the gold rush in the 1860s and the construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway, which reached Kamloops in 1885. Today we're taking a look at some of the historical landmarks and locations you can still find within the city of Kamloops. First up, let's make a stop at the Kamloops Pioneer Cemetery, which sits on land originally owned by pioneer rancher John Peterson. Peterson's son-in-law, John Usher, could have inherited this land, but he encountered a much different fate in 1879 while trying to hunt down the notorious McLean brothers after they escaped from jail. Usher caught up with the outlaws between Kamloops and Merritt, and the encounter ended up with him getting stabbed, shot, and left for dead. Usher's body was returned to Kamloops and was buried in the new cemetery, which sat on the very same land that he was once set to own. In 1884, Peterson's land was purchased by the new town site syndicate, who began charging burial fees, and Peterson himself had to pay $8 in 1892 to bury his wife. The city of Kamloops reclaimed the cemetery site in 1898, and burials continued until 1901, and after that the cemetery was gradually abandoned and left derelict until 1962, when the provincial government ordered the municipality to assume care of the site. Many of the original gravestones ended up being moved or destroyed, which is why the remaining stones have been gathered together for preservation. Just down the street sits Kamloops' Red Bridge, a much-loved landmark and a monument to the history and heritage of the city. Dating back to 1887, the original bridge was constructed for just $7,000 and provided a 1,000 wooden truss structure with a 50-foot swing span. The bridge was reconstructed in 1912 with higher clearance to avoid damage from flooding and to accommodate larger ships, with a third version of the Red Bridge constructed in 1936. At its opening, it was said to be good for more than 30 years. This proved to be an underestimation, as the bridge still stands today, helped along by major reconstructions in 1970 and 2004, which extended the bridge's already long life. A little further along is the historic Canadian National Railway Station, built in 1927, which was meant to help the CNR break the monopoly that the competing Canadian Pacific Railway held in the Kamloops area. By that time, the CPR had already established its transcontinental line running through Kamloops, and it was critical for the CNR to establish a presence there to regain some control. The station was declared a heritage site in 1992 and was given a new lease on life in the 2000s when it was renovated and repurposed as a restaurant. Today it also acts as a stopover point for the Rocky Mountaineer train service, which runs between Vancouver and Banff, Alberta. A few minutes east is the site of the former Provincial Home for old men. Constructed in 1895, the home was meant to house British Columbia's early pioneers, who would often end up destitute, living in rough shacks until they became desperately old or sick. The home provided retired fur trappers and gold miners with food, companionship, and medical care, and aimed to give them some dignity in their autumn years. Notable residents included James Moore, who discovered gold in the Fraser River near Yale, BC, sparking a gold rush that helped shape the province. Although the site yielded $2 million in gold, James turned up the old men's home 56 years later, broke and penniless. Unfortunately, conditions deteriorated as the home became overcrowded and unsanitary, causing it to be declared a fire hazard and condemned in 1909. After further expansions, the home continued operation until 1972, when it was finally torn down. Right next door to the site sits a cemetery, which became the final resting place for 1,084 men who passed away at the home. Today, most of the graves sit unmarked, since little was often known about the home's residents, and many of the stones that were used as markers have sunk beneath the grass. In 2020, a project was initiated to rehabilitate the site, adding monuments naming the individuals buried there, and adding an arboretum, a new perimeter walking path, a labyrinth, and art features. Heading towards downtown, the Plaza Hotel is a prominent landmark, built in 1928 in association with the Kamloops Board of Trade, who were promoting Kamloops as a tourist destination. Plaza was designed to be the finest hotel in British Columbia's interior and meant to appeal to the influx of tourists traveling by motorcar. The hotel is proud to house the oldest elevator in Kamloops, which has been in operation for almost 100 years. Guests of the hotel are asked to exercise a bit of patience since this tiny space only moves at 72 feet per minute, compared to modern elevators which can move at speeds of up to 2,000 feet per minute. Finally, we head up the hill to observe the Chinese cemetery. This is the final remnant of Kamloops' historic Chinatown, a once bustling community which made up about a third of the city's population in the year 1890. Chinese immigrants were first drawn to British Columbia in the 1860s by the hope of finding gold during the Cariboo Gold Rush. When the gold rush ended, they found new work helping build the Canadian Pacific Railway. Over 17,000 Chinese workers were brought in during the 1880s to help build the Yale-Kamloops railway line. Many of those settled temporarily in Kamloops, increasing the Chinese population to over 400 residents. Chinese residents were given a small section of the original town site for their Chinatown, and in 1892 this land was given to the Chinese community for use as a cemetery, since the town's cemeteries wouldn't accept Asian burials. Over time, the Chinatown faded away, with sections taken back by fires and buildings destroyed or torn down over the years. And as with most cemeteries of the time, this one was poorly maintained, and in the 1970s, the remaining grave markers were accidentally removed. In the past decade, there's been an effort to reclaim and rehabilitate the site, paying respect to those interred here. Local Elsie Chung was able to research and identify 248 people buried in the Chinese cemetery, and while it's unlikely that the exact locations of their graves will ever be found, their names, age, and jobs have been listed on a plaque nearby. Thanks for visiting a few of the historic locations scattered around Kamloops, BC with me. Until next time, remember to keep exploring.